just something for us really to consider. I'm going to pause at this point now, because for the next portion of this online talk, I would love to invite Melanie to unmute. And Melanie and I are just really going to go through, we've had lots of conversations off screen. And so Melanie and I are just really going to go back into with some of kind of her experiences. And again, if you hear anything that Melanie talks, and it makes me think all the things, because I'm like, oh, you know, how am I doing this, or what am I doing as a parent? So I just really invite you to listen with an open heart, you know, just listen to her personal experience, because it really has had such a profound impact on me and how I really want to parent my children. So we are very grateful for you to join us. And Melanie's here before school starts, so we're even more appreciative. So Melanie, would you just start by giving us just a little short introduction about who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Melanie. I'm a junior right now in high school. I actually live in California, and I'm very passionate about like finding a solution to this, because I feel like right now it's just chaos until we can figure out where to go from here. During my freshman year, I gave a speech about like the dangers of smartphones to my freshman class, and since then my interest has only grown.
Yeah. And the way that I was connected to Melanie was that I was able to read the speech that she had given and was just so blown away by her wisdom and insight. And so that's originally how we got connected. So Melanie, you have got a really great testimony to share about just your walk with things like social media. So I'd love to just start there if you want to run through kind of some of those early experiences.
Mhm. Yeah, so I got a phone in 7th grade, but I didn't end up downloading social media until 8th grade. And then once I was in 8th grade, I got everything. I got TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and like when I tell you I was so obsessed with these apps, like it was like a whole new world. It didn't feel bad at first. I was like, I'm learning so much new information. I'm learning about new people, new ideas, and I loved it. And then I started to notice, it wasn't all like rainbows, because I was falling behind on my sleep schedule, my homework, all this stuff. And sometime during that year, I watched Netflix's documentary, The Social Dilemma, and it really opened my eyes to truly how addicted I was. I had like attributed my like not completing my homework to a lack of motivation, but then I watched this and I was like, maybe like it's not just me, like maybe these apps are designed for this to happen. So when I decided to delete everything cold turkey, I felt so freed. I had a sense of mental clarity. The first week is a little difficult, but once I got past that like week period, I felt amazing. But this was short-lived, because after 6 months, I noticed myself falling behind on all the trends. Like my friends would say jokes, and I'd be like, "What does that mean?" Like I started to feel left out. I was losing contact with a lot of my friends that I usually chatted with on Snapchat. And so I convinced myself, I was like, "Okay, we're gonna only re-download Snapchat, and only use it as communication. No like scrolling, nothing." But then I don't even know what happened. I ended up getting everything back. So that was when it like really got worse, because I went into high school as a freshman. I had no new friends. I was so desperate for like acceptance from anyone, including social media. I stopped reading. I slept less. I was compromising my health. I'm usually very into fitness, but I was not working out, like nothing. And then after a particularly bad night of scrolling, I hit like 4 hours of continuous scrolling. I sat down to do my homework. I checked my phone for notification, and then it was like I lost consciousness. I looked out, it was dark outside, and I didn't do any of my homework. I didn't study, I didn't take a shower, I didn't even eat dinner. So I was like, okay, we need to delete everything again. And since then, I've been quote unquote clean of social media for 2.5 years. But just because of my experience, I'm only going to talk on like things that adolescents may face, but I'm sure parents can relate to this too, because you guys are struggling with this too.
And so when Melanie and I have spoken, you know, I hear her testimony and I think, oh gosh, you know, like how long have I ever spent, you know, scrolling on? And when was it that I had told myself I was going to make dinner for my kids and, you know, but sat down and ended up losing an hour of my day because, you know, I was also in this loop of looking at videos. So it's just a really interesting parallel to note that, you know, you might hear a teenager's experience, but you may be listening to Melanie and like I did think I can recognize a lot of this in my own use of technology. So it's a really, really interesting parallel to note. And one of the things that Melanie said was, I had a conversation recently in one of our schools, and a middle school student said, well, I have Snapchat, but I only use it for filters. Like, so, is that okay? Because I only use it for this, and kind of what Melanie shared, it can be extremely tempting, with this underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, which is also where our executive function skills are. That is the part of our brain that helps us to manage our time and stay organized. And these apps are designed not just to keep them in like segmented in one little space. Once you're you're kind of in the party, and then you're more tempted to go into all of these different places. So, sometimes I will even hear teenagers will kind of rationalize with me why, well, I only do this on there. Whereas Melanie very beautifully and eloquently shares, it's not only a matter of time before a curious brain starts to think, oh, well, I want to go and see what this section is, or what is this part of this app. So thank you, Melanie. So this webinar is really focusing on peer pressure, and I spoke a little bit about negative peer pressure. So I'm curious if you can share, are there any times when you yourself have experienced negative peer pressure as a teenager?
Yeah, I think the most pressure, like peer pressure I've seen is to get apps like Snapchat, just because that's like where everyone texts. It's like if you don't have Snapchat, you're kind of out of the loop with like what all your friends are doing. And the other thing is to get Instagram as well. But as harsh as it sounds, like texting on iMessage is kind of like social suicide at this age. When you get like a little older, like college kids stop using Snapchat for the most part. But like in high school, if someone is like, oh, like I like your vibe, like they're not going to say, can I have your number? They're going to say, like, what's your Snap? And so it's kind of like embarrassing to be like, oh, I don't have Snapchat, because it just feels like you're so like out of the like social bubble. So and while using these apps is good because it can connect you with your friends, that's only like 10% of the time. Only 10% of the time was I talking with my friends and having meaningful conversations. And the other 90% of the time, I was just aimlessly scrolling through feeds. So I think it's important to recognize that, like, yes, it's a little bit of a trade-off if you decide not to get these apps, but I think the like pros outweigh the cons like a million times over.
I think one of our strongest messages that we are really spreading across our Smart Families community is challenging this idea that kids have to have Snapchat to communicate. There is this kind of stigma against iMessage or other ways of messaging. And so one of our strongest voices from when we go in within schools is to say, you do not have to use, like, there is no rule that people have to use Snapchat. And so we're hoping that as we really distribute this education across the schools, that this that peer pressure to be on Snapchat is something that's just going to be diminished. Like, kids will realize there are so many other ways to communicate with each other, even just picking up the phone and speaking to somebody, which is kind of dying out now. But young people would prefer just to text each other or send each other a snap. So we're definitely hearing what Melanie shares, and we want to challenge that within the current culture and see if that's the kind of pivot away that we can really encourage. So you mentioned social media. What in particular is peer pressure like with social media? And can you share any ways that social media has negatively influenced you or your friendship group?
Mm-hmm. I think the reason social media is such like a big source of peer pressure is because it's so subtle. Like, so a lot of times I'll have thoughts and it'll feel like it's thoughts from my own brain, and then I'll think like, where did I even get that notion that doing this was like embarrassing or not acceptable? And then I'm like, oh, from TikTok. So it's really easy to like play it off and be like, no, this is just like a lack of confidence on my part. But a lot of these ideas that you're getting are coming from social media, and actually less so from my friends, just what's considered the norm in general online. So like for instance, there's this trend right now where people will like be like, get ready with me, do my makeup while I tell you about the top 10 things I hate. And I remember seeing this girl saying like, I hate these like know-it-alls that always raise their hand in class just to like act like they're so smart and stuff. And I am still so insecure about raising my hand in class because I don't want to seem like this person that's like a know-it-all. And it's with seemingly minuscule comments like this can compound in a teen's brain. If you're watching like 100 to 200 videos a day, think about how much information is being like implanted in your brain. And it's just like exponential, and it can lead to like some pretty bad social anxiety when all you think is of these negative things you're hearing from people. And also like think about back, I don't know like what era this is, but like back then, like if you wanted to share some information, it better be some good information, because you either had to have a publisher to, get this printed, or you'd have to have a blog with like a considerable amount of followers to share this. But now if I want to say like elephants are pink, I can go on TikTok and I can use the popular sound and the popular hashtags, and maybe if I have a little bit of followers, people are going to hear my opinion, and it's so much easier to get it across. So, all these like things that are not helpful to society are being shared just because they can. And then another peer pressure issue I see a lot is consumerism. Since deleting these apps, I've had such like less pressure to like buy all the new makeup products and stuff. These apps are built to make money for brands, and I think they're particularly good at getting children to buy these products, because children are the ones that want to feel accepted. And so by pushing a product that says like, if you buy this, we're gonna fix your body image issues and we're gonna make you feel accepted in society, like they're all on it. Like I'm sure you guys have seen this with Stanley Cups and Prime energy drinks, Sephora Kids, all that stuff. But I think it's particularly skewed towards girls, because they usually target like issues that you have with how your body looks, or they'll sell a product that will try like fix these insecurities.
Mm. And so I, in my presentation with students, will share with them. So earlier this year, I went to go and speak to a lady who was working at Sephora, and she was overseeing all of the skincare ranges across all of the stores in Houston. And she told me that they had just been inundated with young girls who had seen a product by the name of Drunk Elephant. And, we started talking about this last year. And then subsequently, in the last few months, it's kind of made national news coverage because everybody has been seeing this. And she had just told me how, as somebody for Sephora, how helpless she felt by all of these young girls buying products that were not designed for them. And they were getting chemical burns on their skin, and they were coming back into the store, with these burns, and they were looking for some kind of skincare advice about what they could do and any other products. And what was this common theme was that children were seeing a product that was not designed for them, constantly like bombarded by these videos about this product, and then had decided that these were what they wanted to use. And even more shockingly, when I had this conversation with a group of upper elementary children, one of the children responded to me and said, well, what else am I going to use on my wrinkles? And she was fourth grade. And so I was just really astounded that even that terminology had reached that young of an age. And it was just from the videos that she was seeing and what she was kind of consuming. And especially we think about algorithms and how algorithms are going to constantly be analyzing how long somebody's looking at a certain particular content. And so if they're seeing these negative body image videos, an algorithm, unfortunately, is going to learn to keep sending them those kinds of videos. And so what actually happens is their content and their viewing gets streamlined into seeing the same thing over and over again. And that's where we see these children who really struggle with their value and their selves and their body image, because they're constantly seeing content that's been, an algorithm is choosing for them. So just a really interesting point to land on. So we talked a little bit about the negative, and I'm a big advocate for also shining some light on positive. So what about positive peer pressure? Is that something that you have experience of, and have you been able to help others resist more negative peer pressure?
Yeah, I think we need to bring back like smartphones having kind of this like disrespectful negative connotation, because nowadays, if you go, like you were saying, like if you go into an elevator and everyone's on their phone, you're not going to stand and like stare at the wall. You're going to go on your phone too, even if you have nothing to do on it, even if you're just looking on like the weather app, you're going to go on your phone because you feel pressured by others to go on your phone. So I think the only way we can kind of like slow this is to like make it a new social norm to limit smartphone usage. Like, let's bring back no phones at the dinner table. Let's bring back, like when you're talking to someone, not even just like glancing at your phone. I think if we can do that, we can kind of change the peer pressure. Instead of to get on your phone, it's like get off your phone. You're with someone. For instance, like I gave that speech about social media, and 3 of my classmates deleted their social media, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like in this age, like I feel like that's a big deal to me. And I actually checked on them and I was like, are you still like going strong junior year? And all of them still have it deleted. So like it's great. And I've seen such a change with them too. You know, a lot of them have started to take school a lot more seriously. One of the girls tried out for a sports team, which I never would have thought she would have. So yeah.
Awesome. I was sharing with Melanie last week that I've even kind of heard what Melanie has shared and challenged myself with some of my own experiences. So, for example, I ride in an elevator every day for work, and there I have gotten this little default of like looking at my phone because it kind of feels awkward to be stood kind of in close proximity to another human, but we're not actually having a conversation with each other. And so I've started to notice everybody does it. And I'm not doing anything meaningful. I'm just using it as a distraction. So now I've challenged myself, no phones in an elevator. Like I stand awkwardly and embrace, like I'm going to stand near a human being and not have to look at a screen just to offset that kind of feeling. So maybe maybe that'll be my peer pressure legacy. I'll get everybody to stop their cell phones in elevators. But again, it was a really striking way to me realizing when I heard Melanie share, just let's make this new social norm that if you're in the presence of another human, that you're not looking at a screen. I was like, oh, I recognize there are times when I do that. So back to some of the risky behavior. So are there any ways you've seen risky behavior encouraged online that can actively promote kind of this peer pressure so that children want to engage with it?
Mhm. I think because you can casually post anything online, like, you know, especially like risky behaviors like vaping or drinking, or speeding. I've actually seen a lot of speeding videos too. Kids become so desensitized to it. You know, like if you see vaping online, even if you don't believe in vaping and you don't stand for that, if someone offers you a vape, it's not going to be that big of a deal because you've already seen it so much. You know, it's easy to become pretty like jaded with these things and be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. A lot of like people that I wouldn't expect to see like doing these things I see, and then I'm like, oh, well, they're not that like they're not a bad person. I don't, and so it makes me think like that what they're doing is not wrong, just because I know the person personally, or I see these people on social media, and I overall like their social media presence. So this becomes an issue when the child is offered something like a vape, and it's like, oh, what's the big deal? You know, not necessarily that it's not bad for them. They probably know that, but they're so used to seeing it that it doesn't seem that like significant anymore.
Yeah, totally understand. So I know we have probably a lot of parents who are on the call today and are listening to what you're saying. And so I would love to get your insight. How has parental involvement really helped you counter this social media trap?
Mhm. I think so for me, because I had social media, what I'm sure you guys have too, but like you get stuck in these loops where you're just like scrolling. It's almost like you're like a zombie, like you're just not there. And so um I would get feel so guilty for wasting this like precious time after school, and then to drown these feelings of guilt, guess what I would do? I would scroll more just to like block out those feelings. And so oftentimes this loop could only be broken by like a real human interaction. Like I remember one time I was just like stuck, like I was just sitting in my chair and I was like I cannot like I was like in a dysfunction loop. Like I could not get up, I couldn't start my homework. And then my dad walks in and he's like, "We're getting ice cream. Do you want to come?" And I was out. Like I freaked. I was like, "Yes." I put my phone down. We got ice cream, and when I got back, I finally was able to start my homework. So I think it's so important to check in on your kids in their room. Like if you haven't seen them in a while, they're unusually quiet in their room, go check. They might be stuck on social media. Even if they're like, "No, get out, like leave me alone in my room." Like sometimes you can just catch them at the right time and really help them out. And then for younger children, if you haven't given them social media, but maybe they watch a lot of TV, like take them outside. I think we forget what real entertainment feels like. When I was younger, me and my brothers would go outside. We'd go climb trees. We'd play in the mud. We'd swim. Um, these were the most precious years of my life. I thank my mom so much because I didn't even know it was an option when I got home to like go watch TV, you know? That was just never an option to me, so it didn't even cross my mind that I was missing out on something like that. And instead I was just really present in the moment. But my sister, who's 10 years old, I'm 16, there's such a big age gap that when we get home from school, she doesn't have anyone to play with. I'm either at like basketball practice or I'm studying, And so instead, what she would do is she'd turn on the TV and she'd watch her iCarly or Henry Danger, all those shows. But last year, my mom was like, "This is too much. Like, you are becoming a Netflix zombie." So she took away the TV during the school week, and she was like, "I will literally pay you. Just go play outside with her for like an hour after school." And the first week, she hated it. I mean, I was pulling my hair out because she was just complaining. She's like, "It's too cold out here. It's boring. Can we just go inside?" Like, she was so uncomfortable with being slightly uncomfortable, playing outside. But then within a week, she was the one begging me to go play outside. I think it's so easy for parents to feel bad for their kids because they already have nothing to do. And you don't want to take away their one source of entertainment. If you're a busy parent that works and you don't have the time to give to your kids, to go play outside with them, it's like, well, I might as well let them do what they want. But I encourage you to be consistent. I mean, kids are pretty innovative with entertaining themselves. I make movies with my sister. They're horrible, but I make them. We do mud facials, like skincare mud, random things. When you guys were kids on road trips, you would find things to do. You didn't have a screen, but you still found ways to be entertained. So, trust your kid to entertain themselves. They're good at it. They just need a little bit of practice. And then I think if you like have an only child, you have to recognize that this is a time commitment for you too. They're not going to immediately go to entertaining themselves once you take their screen away. They're probably going to throw a little tantrum and get upset, but you have to understand that like you have to put some time into this too until they can feel more comfortable with not being so stimulated all the time.
I think an area that I've been really interested in recently was inspired from reading a book called The Opt-Out Family. And this was a lady who has tried to create a template, almost like an algorithm, using the same concepts that the tech industry use to captivate, audiences online, and how families can really create their own algorithm to captivate their children to want to spend time with them. And in the tech industry, one of the big words that they get, or big key phrases they use, is how do we stop the scroll? So, which means that they want people scrolling until they find the perfect video that makes them stop, and then they watch that video, which generates this money for advertising companies. However, I love the concept of like parents being the reason that they stop the scroll. Like, as a human being, you can kind of intercept a child's media usage and you can stop the scroll. And like Melanie said, initially children might find it very uncomfortable to not have this, piece of technology that they've been used to, or a platform that they've been using, but they work their way through it. Just like Melanie shared, now what was discomfort is now enjoyment. And so, just giving the opportunity to have that potential. So, and then finally, Melanie, because I know you are headed off to school shortly, I'd love if you would just kind of conclude and just say, like, how does it feel for you as a teenager, as someone who has opted to not socially conform to all of the tech traps? And just any like final words that you want to share for the online talk today.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing battle. I wish I could say like after I deleted social media that last time in freshman year, like I've just been free and just happy, but it's like every day it's a decision to be like, I'm going to be present. I'm not going to compare myself to people online. Yeah, since getting rid of these time consuming apps, I feel like I have like a whole nother like half a day available to me. Like like those little hour periods between getting home from school and then going to practice is spent doing homework instead of like scrolling and then being like, oh my gosh, I have no time. I have to go to practice. Like time opens up so much. In 2023, I got to read 52 books, and then this year I've read 50 so far, but the year's not over, so I'm good to go. I'll finish it. But I've had the highest grades I've ever had. I'm still having time to spend quality time with my family, which I feel like when I first went to high school, I was like, how do people do this? Like it's your day is so structured in high school. It's just filled and like with all these activities. But now I feel like I actually do have time. Like on the weekends, sometimes after school, I'll get to go out with them, and it's so nice. So parents, I understand that making this decision is bound to cause disagreements. I can make you a bet that you're going to get in an argument over this probably, but I think you need to remind yourself that this is for their well-being, and they're not able to see the future. They're seeing like what they want now instead of what's actually going to satisfy this like dopamine satisfaction loop thing. So yeah, just like trust your judgment. You know, it's so easy to feel bad for them because this is just such a different age. But you know, as much as we don't know a lot about this is the one thing we know, and it's to stay off social media, especially during these years.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Melanie. You
Mhm.
are just so inspiring. I think there's just this misconception that all teenagers want to, buy into social media and buy into, having all of the platforms and so you are such a breath of fresh air. And I think just so it's so important for us to give you a voice because we know there are many, many other people who feel the same way that you do. And that's what we're so excited at Smart Families is to really like find more of you and give you that platform to be able to say, your life has only been infinitely enhanced by taking all of this manipulative technology away. And so, parents, I hope you have just really heard and all of the incredible things that Melanie shares. And one of the things that we do is we also, part of our program is that we ask parents to pledge. So, I mean, I think there's nothing more convicting than hearing that incredible testimony. And if, you have just been on the fence and thinking, I'm not really sure, peer pressure feels too difficult or, there's too much of an influence coming from the friendship group. I really hope you would hear what Melanie has to share today and just, please go on our website, pull up our pledge, choose to really support your family and help grow these healthy children who have healthy relationships with technology. Because I'm sure, Melanie, it's not a case that you just don't use any technology whatsoever. It's just
Yeah,
that
totally.
Melanie,
No, I still use it, just in healthy ways.
yes. And so it's just for having that just be really able to find the healthiest ways, which are going to set them all up for the future. And I mean, such wise words that children think in the here and now. And as parents, we're having to think about the future. What is it, ahead that we need them to be skillful or be able to master. So thank you so much, Melanie. And I'm going to jump back into the presentation just for the last 10 minutes. I'm going to let Melanie go off to school, but thank you so much. We appreciate you so much at Smart Families, Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.